The Suzuki Swift Sport has long been a car embraced by serious drivers who know a great handling hot hatch when they see it, and remain so in this improved third generation form. Though not especially powerful, it's agile, chuckable and brilliant fun for not a lot of money. Now, its 1.4 litre Boosterjet turbo engine has gained mild hybrid assistance, which has enhanced torque, efficiency and in-gear acceleration. This car will still be a well-kept secret in this segment, but one loyal buyers will enjoy hugely.
The Suzuki Swift Sport has always offered buyers a simple, light, hot hatch formula. This third generation version, which was the first to be turbocharged and has now become the first to feature mild hybrid tech, aims to deliver that with a little more sophistication. Some have called this the golden age of the hot hatch. Well, that's a controversial perspective because over the decades, almost everyone has a past favourite. Still, there's little doubt that across the current crop of categories on offer, the shopping rocket genre seems to be in rude health. You don't need to spend super hatch money to properly enjoy it either. In a tiny Volkswagen Up GTI city car or in a Fiesta ST Super Mini, you can these days have more fun at sensible speeds than you think would be legal. Pitched power-wise precisely between those two cars is this one, the third generation Swift Sport. The two original versions of this contender, the RS series model of 2006 and the AZG series design of 2012, both used a high revving, normally aspirated 1.6 litre engine that was central to their appeal. So when this replacement A2L series sport model was originally launched in 2017, the decision to finally switch from a 1.6 litre lump to a lighter 1.4 litre turbo unit was one that loyal buyers took a little time to get used to, particularly as the incoming Boosterjet power plant had a very similar output, rated at 140 PS. Others questioned Suzuki's decision to price the Mark III model so closely to the much pokier Fiesta ST and other junior hot hatches of that ilk. In response, the Japanese brand was keen to reference the fact that the Mark III Swift Sport was, and arguably still is, the lightest and therefore potentially the most agile car in the class, which remains the case even with the car in this improved hybrid form, a variant launched in mid-2020 featuring the brand's latest 48-volt mild hybrid technology. The electrified tech has added a few kilos, it's pushed up the asking price and it's cut power by 11 PS, but in compensation there's a useful improvement in efficiency, and pulling power at low revs, always a strong attribute of the Boosterjet engine, is notably enhanced. As before, there is also a class-leadingly impressive equipment specification, which includes more standard camera-driven safety kit than any other model in the segment can offer. None of that will matter though if the hybrid version of this third generation car is unable to entertain in the way that its predecessors did. So, time to put it to the test. The Swift Sport formula has never been defined by outright power. What's always mattered more with this model line is light, chuckable agility, and that's something that's very easy to lose in an era where every fresh design has to be safer, stronger and laden with technology. Fortunately though, the Heartect platform that Suzuki's adopted for its latest generation of compact hatches allows this third generation model to continue that featherweight philosophy. It's a major contributor to the weight saving that this car enjoys over its predecessor. Yes, it still weighs less than the pre-2017 AZG series design, even in this hybrid form, which has put on 50 kilos of extra weight. Now, much has been made of this electrified model's extra bulk, but the reality is that the curb weight is still only a fraction over a tonne, and it's 45 kilos less than a much smaller Volkswagen Up GTI from the class below. The more directly comparable Super Mini derived hot hatches are around a quarter of a tonne heavier. All of which is important if, as we do, you embrace the Colin Chapman mantra that greater power makes you go faster in a straight line, but lighter weight makes you go faster everywhere. This Swift Sport certainly still feels pretty fast everywhere, even in this mild hybrid form, in which guy's power has dropped from 140 to 129 PS. The 1.4 litre turbocharged Boosterjet engine under the bonnet is still basically the same though. It kicks out nearly 50% more torque than the old 1.6 litre normally aspirated unit could, and that's one that loyalists of this model line will remember was used by all pre-2017 era Swift Sports. With this 48-volt mild hybrid model though, the engine technology on offer is a world away from that old breathless 1.6. This isn't a Prius-like full hybrid setup. The engine can't ever run on electric power alone. Instead, a little lithium-ion battery under the front seat simply helps out where it can, allowing the 48-volt system to incorporate a torque fill control feature to improve engine response at low revs and torque boost to make acceleration smoother. Those two things together account for a 5 Nm increase in torque. There's now 235 Nm on tap, which predictably isn't quite enough to compensate for the extra weight increase we just mentioned and for this hybrid variant's slight power reduction. As a result, the Resta 62 sprint time falls by a second over the original version of this Mark III model. It's now quoted at 9.1 seconds. Top speed remains at 130 miles an hour though. We wouldn't care too much about that if the accelerative benefits of the torque fill system were a bit more obvious. Still, in the mid-range where it matters, there's no doubt that this car feels a fair bit quicker than those figures suggest, especially when the road gets twisty. Kart-like driving dynamics have always been a major attraction for Swift Sport buyers, and here, as before in this Mark III model, they're further developed by a stiff front suspension system with Monroe shock absorbers front and rear. There's initially a touch more lean than you might expect when you first throw the car into a corner with enthusiasm, but the chassis quickly digs in with impressive traction, clinging tightly to your chosen line and encouraging you to ask more of it. The sharply responsive variable ratio steering system helps too, and there's an appropriate soundtrack to go with all this, a fruity growl which embellishes the engine's 2,500 to 4,000 RPM sweet spot, although despite the specially tuned exhaust, it's more obvious inside the car than outside. Suzuki's engineers, well aware of this model line's normally aspirated heritage, have put a lot of work to try to ensure that Boosterjet turbo doesn't suffer from an irritating degree of lag. They've built the little turbine directly into the cylinder head in a bid to eradicate that, and the effort's largely paid off. It's one of the things that makes frequent use of the short-throw 6-speed manual gearbox fairly unnecessary, which is perhaps fortunate because the shift quality isn't quite as tactile and satisfying as we'd ideally like. Second gear corners become third gear sweepers, and it's easy to carry plenty of speed from bend to bend. The aluminium pedals are perfectly placed if you're one of those with a perfected heel and toe competition technique. The bucket sport seats position you commandingly, and the large 285mm diameter brakes inspire confidence too. There's even a little screen between the coloured instrument dials that shows the quantities of power and torque that you might be recklessly deploying at any given moment, although because the graphical readouts are uncalibrated, they don't actually serve much of a useful purpose. Still, the whole experience of driving this car is supposed to be fun, and it's likely that the PlayStation generation will adore the advanced multi-information instrument binnacle display's various selectable coloured readouts. One of these is now provided to cover the workings of the hybrid system, but hot hatch folk will prefer the options that brief you on things like lateral acceleration, turbo boost and G-force readings. Which is all good for those times when you can drive this car as it was designed to be driven, but what about when you can't? Well, you'd expect a tautly set up little Super Mini to be a rather less than comfortable highway travelling companion, and perhaps a downright unpleasant thing over the urban potholes and the tarmac tears of the school run. Here though, there's none of that. Instead of just stiffening the springs up to control body roll, the development team found other ways to maintain chassis composure, spacing out the wheel hub and the wheel bearings, for example, and that helps to explain this Swift Sport's supple suspension movement over porous surfaces. It really is no more unsettled over the bumps than any lesser Swift model would be, and that's an impressive achievement. Given that this car is so everyday usable, it's perhaps appropriate that safety standards for this third generation model are so impressively strong. Stereo cameras combined with a laser sensor to deliver the kind of technology that will baffle Swift Sport buyers who a few years back might have seen this car as something of a stripped out weekend plaything. Rear cross traffic alert, traffic sign recognition and a blind spot monitor have all been added as part of this hybrid model spec, and autonomous emergency braking, lane correction, radar cruise control and advanced forward pedestrian detection are already featured as standard. There's even a weaving alert which buzzes at you if the car thinks that your reactions suggest drowsiness. Yes, drowsiness in a Swift Sport. No, we can't imagine it either. This car doesn't only show some other affordable small hot hatches how they should drive, it also, for us, offers a good template on how they should look. Muscular shoulders, blacked out A-pillars and what Suzuki calls underspoilers all round deliver a potently understated level of pavement presence, but also a demeanour that's assertive enough to suggest that you might be in for a bit of fun at the wheel. This third generation Swift Sport design is 50mm longer than a standard Swift model, and it sits 15mm lower to the ground than the pre-2017 era AZG series second generation version did. These days there's no longer a 3-door body style option, but Suzuki has sought to retain a 3-door like look by hiding the rear door handles in this trailing edge of the C-pillar. It's a sporty touch, much like this heavily emphasised lower character line that flows up into the rear wheel arch. An enhanced carryover element from the Mark II model is found in the way that the blacked out window pillars mentioned earlier create the illusion of a floating roof, and that's emphasised when, as here, you have the top painted in a contrasting colour. The polished alloys are 17 inches in size and they incorporate an uprated braking system with 285mm diameter ventilated discs. At the front, it's appropriately or much more assertive than is the case with the more standard Swift variants, and that's thanks to this completely redesigned bumper with its corner cutouts for the fog lamps here. The grille, which is designed to emphasise this Mark III model's 40mm increase in width, gets a black central moulding strip for more prominent placement of the number plate, and further up lie full LED headlamps with integrated LED daytime running light strips. We like the rear treatment too, especially this prominent roof spoiler and this lower diffuser with its twin circular pipes for the specially tuned exhaust system. It's all complemented by these strong shoulders with their smeared back tail lamps, which are LED illuminated in this top model. Of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff that you can't see, namely this model's stiff, sophisticated TECT platform. It's designed around what Suzuki calls total effective control technology. This uses lots of high-strength steel to make the structure very strong, but also low in weight. And that's the main reason why this Swift weighs so little, even by relatively light class standards. Now, this hybrid version does weigh 50 kilos more than the original version of this Mark III model, but its curb weight still only tips the scales at just 1,025 kilos. That's 20 kilos lighter than the pre-2017 era Mark II model, despite this Mark III version's extra equipment. Now, to give you some perspective, that makes this car 237 kilos lighter than something like a Ford Fiesta ST, and it's even 35 kilos lighter than a tiny Volkswagen Up GTI. Still think all small hot hatches are much the same? Time to take a seat up front. You feel this model's lightweight when you slam the driver's door shut, which isn't ideal, but otherwise, by Super Mini standards, the cabin feels quite nice, providing you're not expecting premium quality fittings and acres of slush moulded soft touch plastic. You're not paying for that kind of thing here, and you don't get it. What you do get is just enough interior differentiation to make you feel like you're in a serious hot hatch. The grippy branded sports bucket seats are probably the highlight here. They prove to be supportive and surprisingly comfortable too, providing your frame is narrow enough to fit into them, of course. There is also a set of aluminium pedals down there with a chrome accented gear knob too, a red stitched gaiter around it, and emotive red flashings on the fascia and the centre stack. The 3-spoke sports steering wheel with its matte and satin black inlays feels good to hold, and through it you view 2 main gauges, a rev counter with a red dial face and a speedometer that's primarily coloured silver. In between the gauges lies what Suzuki calls an advanced multi-information display, a 4.2-inch colour screen which, as well as the usual time and fuel consumption screens, shows a hybrid energy monitor along with an impressive variety of sporty readouts. Now, these include a G-force motion meter, some rather curiously presented red and yellow power and torque readouts, turbo boost data, and graphically streaming displays showing acceleration intensity and braking force in real time. Otherwise, it's all very much as it would be in any ordinary Swift, which means that the centre of the dash is dominated by this 7-inch colour infotainment touchscreen. It's certainly not short of standard features, including navigation, a DAB tuner, Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay, and MirrorLink phone mirroring connectivity. Unfortunately though, the graphics still look dated, the processor times are quite slow, and there are no shortcut buttons or dials to help you to access the information. So you end up stabbing away at the touchscreen and just covering it with fingerprints. What else? Well, build quality seemed a touch better this time around, a legacy perhaps of the fact that this car is these days once more built in Japan. The pre-2017 era Mark II generation model was assembled in Hungary. The materials used are quite nice too, and there are some neat design touches. These high-set central air vents, for example, which help to draw attention away from some of the less tactile materials used in some less obvious areas of the dash. All the switchgear is easy to reach and intuitive to use, and the circular ventilation controls down at the base of the centre stack here look smart and work well, controlling an effective twin electric fan assembly. There's good forward visibility through the upright windscreen, but the over-the-shoulder view could be better, so you'll need the standard rear view camera and, an addition for this hybrid model, the rear parking sensors. As for practical touches, well, things get off to a decent start with 2 properly sized cup holders ahead of the gear lever here. A shallow storage tray lies just in front of those, and if the designers had allocated just a few pence more for a non-slip rubber surface for that receptacle, it would be ideal for your smartphone, given that there are 12-volt USB and aux-in ports just above. As it is, your handset will slide all over the place as soon as you get underway. Unfortunately, there's nowhere else provided that will hold it securely, since in the standard spec, Suzuki doesn't provide any sort of storage box between the seats. Now, the door bins are acceptable, but the glove box is tiny. A further cup holder is provided just behind the, thankfully, conventional handbrake here. And there is a useful ticket holder on the driver's sun visor. Right, time to take a seat in the back, and that's accessible via these concealed upper door catches we mentioned earlier. Now, this 3rd generation model is a fraction shorter than the old pre-2017 era Mark II model, and that's something which might lead you to expect the worst back here, or at least it might, before you also appreciate the fact that as part of this A2L series design, this car's front and rear axles have been pushed 20 millimeters further apart than they were in the pre-2017 2nd generation model. As a result, there's extra wheelbase length, which ought to free up a little more rear seat room. Having said all that, we don't want to raise your hopes too much. This car does remain one of the more compact models in the Super Mini hot hatch segment when it comes to rear seat space. Some might even find it a touch claustrophobic back here. Still, thanks to that lengthened wheelbase and some extra room that's been liberated from the engine compartment, there is now a reasonable amount of legroom on offer for this class of car. As a result, in contrast to previous Swift Sport models, which really struggled to accommodate rear-seated adults, even on quite short journeys, this Mark III version is more credible in this regard. We're still not sure that we like the fact that you sit slightly lower than was the case with older generation Swift Sport models, and it is a pity that when you're sat back here, the front sport seats rather obscure your view ahead. It's also slightly annoying that the provision of those front bucket chairs means that you don't get seat back pockets. 3 adults confined to the back here are going to need to be on very friendly terms indeed, but at least the unfortunate middle occupant won't have to contend with the kind of over-prominent central transmission tunnel that you do get in some rivals. There are no door pockets back here, but you do get door bottle holders that can swallow a 1 litre bottle of water. Plus there's this small coin cubby by the electric window switch, and it's also easy to reach forward to the central compartment that's provided behind the handbrake. Out back in the boot, we're promised that the benefits of this A2L generation model's wheelbase increase will be more obvious, and sure enough, the light tailgate raises to reveal a reasonably sized cargo area space. It's 265 litres in capacity. Now that's not anything like enough to threaten the segment class leaders, but it is at least enough to keep this Suzuki on a competitive footing with them. A Ford Fiesta ST, for example, offers only 27 litres more. We are a little disappointed to find that the adjustable height luggage board that you get on some similarly sized Suzuki models just can't be had here, even as an option. That would alleviate to some extent the issues raised by this high loading lip, which you have to negotiate when you're getting heavy items in and out. There's a tyre inflation kit beneath the boot floor here. Unfortunately, like most Super Mini makers, Suzuki doesn't provide a space-saver spare wheel as standard, nor has it thought to provide tie-down hooks to keep heavier loads in place. On the plus side though, useful touches include a bag hook and this storage compartment in the wheel arch that could take a few small items if need be. Should you need more room, then the rear seat bench folds in the usual 60-40 split, although that does leave quite a step in the floor once it's flattened forward, at which point a modest 579 litre cargo area is freed up. Much has been written about the pricing of this third generation Swift Sport. Commentators who back in 2018 found the initial model's £18,000 asking figure rather difficult to stomach, gulped even more when they saw the £21,500 sticker applied to this updated Swift Sport Hybrid variant 2 years later. Why wouldn't you buy an alternative Ford Fiesta ST, they all chorused? Well, because this Swift Sport is in many ways a more technically advanced product, is Suzuki's answer. We understand the Japanese maker's point of view. Still, it might help the brand's cause if it were prepared to offer a stripped-out entry trim level, as Ford does, for enthusiasts wanting a junior hot hatch like this, but who are buying on a budget. Now that would have enabled this car to reach down into the sector for warmed-up city cars too. As it is though, there is just this single fully kitted out spec, and that's based around a 5-door body style. There's now no 3-door option, nor can you have anything other than 6-speed manual transmission. You'll be wanting to know about junior hot hatch rivals. Well, we mentioned the Fiesta ST, so let's start with that. Yes, it does offer a lot more power than the Suzuki, but motoring press journalists who champion that car ignore the fact that the Ford would cost a lot more to run, and that a Fiesta ST specified to a similar level as this Swift Sport, the Fiesta ST3 variant, would cost you nearly £4,000 more. If you're wondering about a comparable Mini Cooper, well, one of those in comparable 5-door hatch sport form will cost around £2,000 more than the Suzuki. A more difficult case to argue from Suzuki's point of view is against the other junior shopping rocket that we really like, the Volkswagen Up GTI, which at the time of this test in mid-2020 had a sticker price of around £16,500 in 5-door form, so around £5,000 less than this Suzuki. The VW's performance is very similar to that of this Swift, despite a 14 PS power deficit, but it's a smaller model from the city car segment below with a much smaller boot, hence the price difference. You could say the same about another rival worth a mention, the Fiat 500 based Abarth 595. That's priced within a few £100s of that hot hatch Up model. If, having considered all that, you conclude that it is a Swift Sport that you really want, then a key determining factor may well be the generous equipment tally that this car comes with. So let's cover that now. Now, as you'd expect from a hot hatch, there's a bespoilered body kit and a smart set of alloys, these polished ones being 17 inches in size. You also get LED beams for the headlamps, for the daytime running lights and for the rear lamp clusters, plus front fog lamps, rear privacy glass, a keyless entry and start system, power folding mirrors, auto headlamps, an alarm and all-round electric windows too. Rear parking sensors, they also now make the team sheet. Inside there are front bucket sport seats, aluminium pedals and a leather trimmed sports steering wheel, plus automatic air conditioning, driver's seat height adjustment and a pollen filter too. There's a reversing camera and infotainment provision that's accessed via a 7-inch centre dash screen, and it includes navigation and Bluetooth, also a smartphone link display audio package, and that has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring connectivity. There is also a DAB audio system with a couple of tweeters, but it only has 4 speakers. As for options, well, many of these are aesthetically orientated. We'll start with the exterior paint choices. The Swift Sport Hybrid is available in 1 solid shade and 5 metallic colours that you can choose at no optional cost. Plus there are 2 further colours which are available optionally as 2-tone with a black roof, which, as you can see, is what we've got right here. Now beyond that, you can specify a coloured wheel decal set that's available in yellow, blue or red, and you can add a yellow Suzuki branded centre cap for each wheel. You can also change the colour of the door mirror housings. You can add a chromed boot trimming strip and also an aluminium fuel cap cover. Plus there are rain and wind deflectors. For the inside, you can add a deluxe carpet mat set or an anti-slip driver's floor mat insert. You might also like to add door sill trims. Those are available in either aluminium or black, and a centre armrest with extra storage. For the boot, there's a sill loading edge protector and a boot liner cargo tray. That's enough on that. What about safety? Well, Suzuki wants to emphasise that one of the advantages of this car's Hartect chassis is the way that it disperses collision force energy more efficiently, and that considerably improves crash safety. Extra body welds for this sport model have further improved this structure's rigidity. In addition, as you'd expect in this day and age, this Swift Sport model has ABS anti-lock brakes, ESP stability control, a hill holder clutch and a brake assist function for emergency stops. There's also a tyre pressure monitoring system, and that goes along with twin front, side and curtain airbags. Plus there are 2 ISOFIX child seat mounts in the rear bench. What really sets this Swift Sport model apart from its competitors, though, is the amount of camera-driven safety technology that it includes as standard. Stereo cameras mounted either side of the interior rearview mirror, combined with a laser sensor to deliver a whole range of features. The 5 key ones available right from beginning of production with this Mark III A2L series model include autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, a weaving alert function and high beam assist. Lane departure warning and the weaving alert function are both activated at speeds of over 37 miles an hour, and they're purely there to warn you with a steering wheel vibration if you've deviated over lane markings, or with an instrument display warning flash if you're weaving perhaps through drowsiness within your carriageway. And finally, high beam assist, that's there to automatically dip your headlights at night in the face of oncoming traffic. To this tally, this Sport Hybrid model further adds rear cross traffic alert, traffic sign recognition and a blind spot monitor. Overall, you won't find another affordable hot hatch with more safety provision than that. Suzuki reckons that the 48-volt mild hybrid tech employed here has delivered significant improvements in fuel economy and emissions. So let's see, the WLTP figures show that this Swift Sport Hybrid model manages 50.1 mpg and 127 grams per kilometre of CO2. For reference, the previous WLTP figures of the non-hybrid version were 47.1 mpg and 135 grams per kilometre, which might suggest that the benefits of the 48-volt technology aren't particularly huge, although Suzuki points out that over a year of typical motoring, that difference would accrue to quite a lot. Every little helps, I suppose. You may be familiar with the way that mild hybrid engines work, but just in case not, here's a quick recap. Basically, energy that would otherwise be lost when braking or cruising off throttle is harvested via a kinetic energy recovery system and then sent to a small lithium-ion battery that here has been placed beneath the front passenger seat. This is used to drive a belt-driven ISG, integrated starter generator unit, and power the engine stop-start system. Suzuki's old 12-volt mild hybrid package, as previously used in lesser versions of this current Swift, didn't do a lot more than that, but this improved 48-volt setup can also deliver other important benefits. Most importantly, something quite unusual amongst current mild hybrids, and that's the ability for this Suzuki to idle and even coast on full electric power, although only below 10 miles an hour. You can monitor any attempts at frugality via a graphical consumption readout, which can be selected from the instrument binnacle's advanced multi-information display screen. You can also select an idle stop time readout, which tells you how long the standard stop-start system has been in operation for. This also tells you the total idle fuel save that this has generated, although we're not really sure why you'd ever want to know that. As before, it is a little unfortunate that the frequent need to replenish the tiny 37-litre fuel tank robs you of the perception of frugality that this car's relatively frugal efficiency showing ought to create. What about other costs? Well, a key cost in running any hot hatch lies in insurance. Swift Sport is rated at Group 35D, which seems somewhat unfair given that a more powerful Ford Fiesta ST rates at Group 28E. What else? Well, once your Swift Sport has been registered for 3 years, it'll become eligible for Suzuki's fixed price service package, which will enable you to get servicing carried out for a single fixed price that will include parts, labour and VAT. There are around 180 Suzuki dealers around the UK, and they're noted for excellent customer service. You can also even out the cost of regular maintenance with a service payment plan, which covers you for anything between 1 and 3 garage visits. Now that could be important because this Swift does need relatively frequent garage visits every 12 months or 12,500 miles. As for residual values, well, after the industry standard 3-year 60,000 mile operating period, experts predict that this car will be worth £6,725. That's 35% of its original asking price. Like every Swift variant, this one comes with a 3-year 60,000 mile warranty. Suzuki maybe needs to think about extending this to match rivals who are now offering 4, 5 or even 7-year plans. There's also a year's breakdown cover that extends across the whole of Europe and includes roadside recovery. You can extend it yourself at extra cost via arrangement with your dealer. A 12-year anti-rust guarantee comes with the car too. In an ideal world, the Swift Sport wouldn't need any sort of hybrid electrification. This Japanese junior hot hatch was always at its best in its most simple, uncomplicated forms. But we don't live in an ideal world. Suzuki needs to drive down emissions across its range, and hot hatches, even simply orientated ones, have to evolve. We wish that wasn't the case, because the consequence of all that is that the price of this one has been pushed up rather a lot. But given the need for evolution, we can at least give some thanks that the essential character of this car is still as endearing as ever. Endearing enough to sustain an asking price getting on for around £22,000. Well, you'd wonder about that on paper, but it is worth a drive in this car before you make your decision. The Swift Sport does, after all, remain one of the best kept secrets in GTI motoring. Modestly powered perhaps, but still quite modestly weighted too. And that means it can routinely put the wind up far more exalted machinery. Previous versions are almost all owned by people who wouldn't give many thanks at all for an offer of trading their car against a pricier, pokier, warmed-up Fiesta, Mini or any other shopping rocket. As for the hybrid tech, well, it doesn't really change the driving experience very much. We're really not sure whether to be thankful for that or not. As we've just suggested, what was already on offer didn't really need much embellishment, but it would have been good to see the fabled torque-fill benefits, which are supposed to come with mild hybrid technology, adding a bit more of a boost to low-speed pickup. It would have been good to see the 48-volt electrification making a bit more of a difference to the running cost figures too, given the premium that Suzuki expects us to pay for it. It all means that in order to really want this car, you've really got to be smitten by the attributes that this third generation A2L series model already had, which could be the case. There's old school GTI fun without old school crudeness. Although you probably won't be moved to buy this Suzuki after looking at the specs in the brochure, take a test drive down your favourite back road and we reckon that you might see this car in a whole new light. Need convincing that power isn't everything in a performance car? Well, if so, you need to drive this one. We guarantee it'll surprise you.